Even though I'm solo up here all by myself, I promise I'll be interesting and passionate and make this as entertaining as it would be if there were 8 of us. So I am Cary Moon. I am running for mayor because I believe in Seattle's potential. Many of you have lived here a long time. You know how great this city is. You know that we have a spirit of innovation. We have a commitment to the well-being of one another. We have strong progressive values. We have deep roots in environmentalism and creating great public life and public space. But we are losing our way. We are becoming a city of haves and have-nots. And so many of our neighbors are being pushed out because of the housing affordability crisis. We are not providing for our homeless friends and neighbors, and the number of people we're pushing into homelessness is rising faster than the number that we're helping out. We have an economy that is building tremendous wealth for the lucky few, but others are falling further and further behind. And we have a transit system that is simply not keeping up with growth. And I identified these problems. I've been working on these problems for 20 years, and I got to the point where I felt like we need stronger leadership. We need people with urban planning expertise in City Hall. We need to get ahead of these challenges of urban growth. We need bold, transformative solutions to get Seattle back on track. So I decided to put my hat in the name in the ring. I don't remember, I already whatever. Forgot the figure of speech, I'm so tired. But excuse me, I'm really focused on solutions to these challenges and making sure Seattle is welcoming, inclusive, creative, affordable, and committed to shared prosperity for everyone. I started my career as an engineer. I have been an urban planner and an activist, starting in neighborhood planning in the 90s and working in activism in Seattle since then and in urban planning, and I'm ready for your questions. I'm really excited about solving these problems together with you and ready to talk, so thanks.
So my name is Steve Zemke. I'm chair of Treepac and Friends of Seattle's Urban Forest, and we'll give you a really easy question to start out with here. Currently, there's no requirement during development for no net loss of canopy for new and existing property development, unlike other cities like Lake Forest Park, Portland, etc. have. So would you support developers being required to replace either on-site or off-site a volume canopy equivalent for trees removed by either planting new trees or paying into a city tree fund to compensate for ecological value lost by the trees being removed?
Yes, I think that's a great approach. We need to work out the details of how to do it, but yes, we need to replace. And when we're taking out trees, we need to increase the number of trees so that we are growing our canopy over time. So yes, I would work with you to figure out a solution to make that happen.
Okay, I'm actually going to start off with a question from the community. So running a city as complicated as Seattle requires a unique set of skills. What in your employment or personal background gives you those experiences? And particularly, what's your management style, and how would you approach managing multi-departments within a large city? And then further, is there anything you can recognize right now that you would change about the way city's structured?
Great question. So I'll start with the last bit first. I believe that the last 2 mayors have been so focused on ego and on politics that we've lost sight of what effective leadership looks like in the city. The mayor's job is to be the chief executive of the city. That means setting the vision. That means building a strong organization. That means hiring great staff with the professional expertise, both in the mayor's office and departmental leadership positions, to run the city and deliver the public services the city needs to deliver. It means empowering people to do their job, letting them do their job, and holding them accountable to do their job. I think in the last mayoral administration, the figure of speech people have often used is the head is disconnected from the body. There's all this great talent in city departments. There's all this skill. There's a white paper or a strategic plan developed for every single possible idea we've all identified, but they're simply not connected to the leadership in the mayor's office. So I would enforce great management structure, communication channels, systems of collaboration around shared initiatives because we absolutely have to have a very structured, clear, transparent decision process if we want to be a mission-driven organization, not a politics-driven organization like we are now.
So I have a question that was sent to us by Angie Gerard, and it has to do with relates actually to your comments yesterday regarding homeless people and how we deal with that in the city. And you had commented that you thought we should not be moving them out, and that creates problems. And this is as Angie says here, as Seattle strives to more effectively respond to the homelessness and drug crime crisis, how would you better protect our green spaces? Parks, trails, and informal green belts managed by SDOT, SPU, and others are really taking a beating with hazardous waste, environmental degradation, and decreased public safety with no clear leadership on this front. How will you lead accountability and effectiveness on this?
So this is a hard problem. We all know that we would like to solve homelessness. We wish we'd solved homelessness 20 years ago, but we haven't yet solved it. We have an economy that is pushing more and more people into economic insecurity. We have a housing affordability crisis where we simply do not have enough affordable housing. We have defunding of mental health services at the state level, meaning folks simply cannot get the care they need to solve the problems they're dealing with every day. So our homelessness crisis is a multi-system failure. I don't think we can put Band-Aids on it, and I don't think we can chase people around who are sleeping outside without offering them a place to come inside. So the comment you're raising came out of a discussion about this yesterday. I believe the sweeps are inhumane and unjust. We have 400 unsanctioned homeless encampments in our city, and the city has got to offer people a place to come inside. Low barrier shelters, tiny house village, sanctioned encampments, new homeless shelters in community centers for families. We've got to look at making current shelters 24-hour. We need to do all these things, get places to invite people to come inside, and then go to them with social services and outreach workers to invite them to come inside, do the work we need to do to bring them inside before we push them from one location to another. Because simply making them move from one homeless encampment to another is disruptive and chaotic and can throw people into further danger and insecurity, and it's simply unjust. And so we have to focus on solutions before we push people around from one place to another.
So as a community council, we've noticed a shift toward a more centralized engagement with neighborhoods. The district councils have been defunded, and the coordinators have gone away. With that said, and acknowledging the real concerns about diversity on councils, as well as the perceived difference between renters and homeowners and all those issues, what can the city do to support neighborhood councils, to support neighborhood-driven ideas, and protect against a sort of centralized approach toward community development?
So when I first moved here for the second time in 1997, the first projects I did were neighborhood planning. I did the Pioneer Square neighborhood plan with that community. And under the great Jim Deers, I think we invented neighborhood planning. We invented inclusive, participative planning in the public interest, working directly with neighborhoods. We know how to do it. We used to do it really well, and we have been defunding and dismantling that program, I don't know why, for the past 8 years or longer. And I think we need to reinvent a 21st century version of neighborhood planning, and that means we have to start with a constructive shared future vision where we say this is the future city we're aiming for. How can we all work together to get there, looking at all the tools on the table and inviting everybody to bring their best ideas. And it also means more inclusive neighborhood process, because we have devolved into a system that feels unapproachable and exclusive to newcomers. They don't feel welcome, they don't understand the language, they don't maybe understand the process well enough. So we've got to have better mentoring relationships. We've got to have better facilitation so that newcomers are encouraged to speak up and can learn what they're doing. And we also need to make sure we're being inclusive across race and class and gender and age, because the system has to work for everybody. We have to meet people with the skill level they have, with the schedule they have, and figure out ways to make the communication channels easier for people to use without having to come to long, complicated evening meetings with a lot of skill level that they might not have already. So we've got to reinvent how to do this, and I think we can figure it out in Seattle. It's not impossible, but it is going to take resources to do it well.
Okay. Another area that has no simple solution here deals with the the accessory dwelling units and putting those into single-family neighborhoods. You again yesterday were noted as supporting more movement into building in single-family neighborhoods. So removing barriers to creating accessory housing units in single-family zones, including backyard cottages known as detached accessory dwelling units, will significantly remove trees from Seattle's urban forest, as some 58% of Seattle's trees are located in the single-family zone. How do you propose to compensate for this loss? I mean, we've got a tension going on here with growth versus maintaining and growing the canopy in our city.
So I think start from the premise that we all know folks are moving here for a lot of reasons. We have good jobs here, we have a booming economy here, we have a great quality of life that brought a lot of us here, and we have to acknowledge that we've got to make room for these folks. And so my proposal is let's have that conversation in neighborhoods about how do we look at growth targets and figure out, with all the tools on the table, what's the best way to achieve growth targets with the neighborhood, with community involvement. And that means looking at all the tools, looking at up zones with mandatory housing affordability requirements, like it now is proposed under HALA. Look at duplexes, stacked flats, row houses, backyard cottages, congregate housing. There's a lot of ways the rest of the world builds affordable housing, and we have to open up our toolkit to consider some of those that might be appropriate in neighborhoods. And I think if we focus on what are our growth targets, how do we accommodate the growth without sacrificing tree canopy, without sacrificing historic structures, how do we use the right tools in each neighborhood to achieve the growth targets, I think we can figure out how to do it together. But I think sort of the top-down imposition of you shall do this makes us all bristle. It's frustrating and it's irritating because we know we want to be a constructive part of the solution, and I want the city to do a better job inviting that dialogue and collaboration.
Well, that answered part of a question, but this is from Alan. So regarding HALA and finding that balance between density and maintaining neighborhood character and style, where do you think that line is between supporting density and maintaining the character and style? And more specifically, how would you define character and style of a neighborhood, as well as livability? These are words, vocabulary that's often used, but often there's crosstalk between density advocates and those that are supporting less density. So what do you think what do those words mean?
I think the characterization of density advocates versus protectors of culture is exactly the wrong place to start, because that sets up this conflict from the beginning, and we can't go there because we know what happens when we go there. We fail and we end up fighting one another. We have to look at all the different layers of urban growth. This is what urban planning is about. You look at mobility and access, you look at quality of life, you look at the functioning of the ecosystem, you look at the ability to provide housing for the folks who want to live there, you look at affordability, you look at the economic development potential of the commercial strip, you look at character. These are all things that planners know how to do by looking at them together and finding trade-offs and finding the right balance. This is the kind of planning we need to do. This sort of looking at one issue at a time and devolving into a fight between two factions is simply not working, and we need to have a more nuanced conversation around how to do all these things together. So there's not a one-size-fits-all approach for any neighborhood. We need to work with every neighborhood about what's important here. Is it your single-story commercial strip that you want to protect because they're great businesses and they're affordable rents? Is it historic housing structures? Is it tree canopy? We need to look at what are the essential things that you're trying to preserve and protect in your neighborhood, look at the growth targets and figure out together how to balance both as best as we can.
There's a question here from Seattle Green Spaces Coalition, and I'm going to add a preface to it, which is asked if you would consider creating what I'd call an environmental services department. And the reason it follows in this question here, they say Seattle's green infrastructure, the green space and tree canopy and public and private land, is worth about $1 billion a year in benefits and savings to the city of Seattle. Yet the city doesn't account for a penny of it. The city has a fiduciary responsibility to steward its assets. Will you commit the city to treating our natural capital as an asset, accounting for it, and requiring the public and private sectors to steward it as a way to counterbalance the continuing encroachment of today's booming developments?
So looking at all our infrastructure, looking at what assets we do have as assets is one way to remind ourselves that these have value and that it's our job to steward them, that the government's job is to take care of the assets of the city. But I want to be careful not going too far with putting a monetary value on everything, because that comes with its own problems. I want to just recognize that quality of life in the city and access to nature are human rights. They are human values that we hold dear in our city, and that we have to look at, we just have to look at this challenge in where we don't put a monetary value on everything. We have to accept some things as important to us, and many different competing interests are important to us, and we have to work together as citizens with our brains, with our creative energy, and figure out a way to balance everything we can. So yes, thinking of things as assets can be useful, but I just don't want to go too far and start putting monetary value on everything, because then everything's for sale. And that's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to protect and value the things that we love and care about.
On a similar topic, what is your position on a public bank, and how would you go about doing that if you support it?
So I'm a believer. I watched what North Dakota was able to do with their public bank, and it's fascinating how much money there is available to projects in the public interest when you have a bank that's working in the public interest. So I think absolutely we should pursue this. I think it's probably more appropriate to do it at the state level, because it's a lot bigger and there's a lot more assets, and there can be a lot more kind of balance, and a lot more balance across all the different cities and all the different deposits, and we can keep it, it's bigger is better when it comes to a public bank, is what I'm trying to say. So yes, we should try to do it at the state level. I think Bob Hasagawa was on the right track when he was pursuing this in the legislature. I'm not sure a city bank can have as much reach as what we need, but if we can't do it at the state level, I would definitely look at doing it at the city level, because it's a way to get access to capital for projects we care about. It's a way to get access to capital for affordable housing, for empowering young and minority-owned, immigrant and refugee-owned businesses. It's a way to get funding for the community-driven projects that we want to happen in South Seattle and in lower-income neighborhoods. So it's a great tool. I would support it and try to make it happen.
The 2016 Seattle Tree Canopy Assessment found that there is a statistically significant inverse relationship between tree canopy and both people of color and people within 200% of the poverty level. The report found that in census tracts with lower amounts of tree canopy, more of the population tends to be people of color and have lower incomes. So the question is, given this relationship, how can the city work to identify opportunities to work with underserved communities in order to facilitate increased tree canopy? And we're particularly looking at the south end here, which has a lot lower canopy level than the north end of the city.
It's a great idea, and yes, we should be doing this. The life expectancy in South Park versus Laurelhurst is 13 years gap. It's just simply not healthy to live in the lower income neighborhoods of South Seattle, because there's pollution, because there's no tree canopy, because the ecosystems have toxic waste in them. We absolutely have to keep working on investing in improving the quality of life, the health, the public health of South Seattle neighborhoods. So yes, definitely let's look at How can we make trees available for free and have planting workshops and work parties where community groups and corporate employee groups are going out to do volunteer day, go help plant trees. I think we absolutely know how to solve this problem, and we have the resources because trees aren't that expensive. We have the sweat equity of the volunteers of Seattle. Let's figure this out and let's make this a program and rebalance the tree canopy so that it's healthy in the south as it is in the north.
So I think we're running close on time, but I think do we have time for one more from each of us? Yes. Okay. So I guess I'll, from the council, what, in your view, what position are you the closest with to your opponent, and what position are you the furthest away, in your own view? Not what the media says, but.
So we both believe in safe consumption sites as a harm reduction public health strategy to help people who are addicted to drugs. We both agree on that. I think we're farthest away on housing affordability. The more I hear her talk about it, the more she's focused on market-based solutions, like giving low-income people a $100 rental voucher so they magically can afford a $2,000 a month apartment. I'm not really sure that's going to work. I think we need to look at building public and nonprofit affordable housing, and we need to look at stopping the speculation that's happening that's increasing our property values so quickly. And I think we need to take a much firmer approach from the city and feel responsible for guiding the housing market so that we are building enough housing for folks who want to live and work here, and that housing is affordable to folks who want to live and work here, and not let the free market figure out how to do it on its own, because guess what? That's never worked in a city that is on a growth trajectory like ours, and it's not enough. It's part of the solution, but it's not the whole solution.
And this is a question from the audience, several parts in it, but it says tree regulations increase housing costs and don't address invasive species like ivy that continually strangle trees. Would you consider an incentive approach to motivate better stewardship? And could we hire homeless to cut the ivy off the trees?
So I think looking at incentive approaches might be a good idea in order to get more tree canopy. So yes, I think I would look at that if what we're doing now is not working, but I would like to consider best practices, a whole range of approaches, and really see what's the best way to get this problem solved. And I think I'd like to go back a little bit and talk more about leadership. In my past, I spent my first 10 years of my career as an engineer. Sometimes I was working within an organization to develop better systems for achieving the goal of the organization. But I also worked across multiple organizations where I was managing information systems across 3 different facilities for an enterprise. And so I have a lot of experience with complex systems. My brain is an engineer system brain, and so I understand how to create a structure to achieve a goal. I understand how to set up the mayor's office, and I'm fully committed to hiring professional staff in the mayor's office to lead on delivery of services. So I think, most people come to politics maybe from legislative roles. I think I've worked enough as an executive, understanding how to build systems to achieve shared goals, that I'd like you to consider that might actually be a better fit than coming from the legislative arena or coming from being a corporate lawyer or a prosecutor. It's a very different arena that Jenny's worked in. I've worked in the public sector, in the private sector, in the nonprofit and advocacy sector. I know how all of those sectors have to work together to build a great city. So I think my broad kind of leadership across all these different industries and agencies and my 20 years of experience working directly with the city is a pretty good fit for the job of Mayor of Seattle.
Thank you.